"98 nations competed in the 1995 Judo Championships in Shiba, Japan. In 1997, 110 countries were present at the Paris Championships. Since the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games, judo has ranked second amongst the most universal sports and has been watched by a large number of television viewers. It means that at the present time, millions of people practice or have practiced this activity throughout the world. In the beginning was the word of Jigoro Kano, giving a lesson in his dojo at Kodokan. Touching pictures. The whole story could be summed up as follows. A frail young man, because he was bullied by his comrades, took upon himself to become a master in the art of unarmed combat, as it was practiced by the samurai. Judo was born.
Le fondateur du judo, Jigoro Kano, maître Jigoro Kano, était un être exceptionnel.
The founder of judo, Jigoro Kano, master Jigoro Kano, was an exceptional human being. It's true that he was a man of the 19th century, but his ideas were quite modern. He was a brilliant scholar, an intellectual who had earned a reputation in the Japanese society. He was a prominent member, that is, he held a high position at the imperial court. He was dean of the Teachers' Training College. First, he strove for the creation of an attractive method of physical education. For doing so, he took some techniques from the jiu-jitsu, the art performed by the warriors, and created judo. He also struggled in order that Japan become a member of the International Olympic Committee, and he was himself the first Japanese to belong to this committee.
The Kano method, which at first had to impose itself against other schools of jiu-jitsu in memorable contests, became compulsory in all Japanese schools. Here, filmed in 1907, is a demonstration performed by Master Kano in front of the Emperor of Japan. Judo, as Kano saw it, was a complete educational method on the art of making the most of one's energy, and what was learned on the mat should also serve in everyday life. Teachers were trained at Kodokan, the place where wisdom, or it could be said where life, was taught. A demonstration by Kano's pupils, Nagaoka and Mifume, for instance, shows that from the start, yesterday's judo contained the judo of today. It was up to the pupils who had become masters to spread judo abroad.
La diffusion du judo et sa promotion est assez originale.
The way judo expanded and gained a worldwide popularity is rather unusual. It is indeed quite extraordinary. It's one of the rare, perhaps even the only example of a sport, I think, which developed in Asia. And from the beginning of the 20th century, as soon as 1910, 1915 in Europe, a certain number of judo teachers trained at Kodokan with Master Jigoro Kano. And then they came to Germany, to Italy, and also to England and France.
Judo, in its development, benefited from the myths of superiority and invulnerability which had accompanied the introduction of jiu-jitsu. Judo jiu-jitsu, in its progress, sometimes followed surprising paths. A demonstration of judo, a rather rudimentary kind of judo, is performed on the front line by Senegalese infantrymen during the First World War.
qui a accompagné la promotion du judo, assurément, c'est
There is no doubt that the mystic aspect of judo played an important part in its promotion. There was also a certain number of habits, of behaviors. People talked about kwatsu, about reviving methods. And I think it is better to consider the question from a realistic standpoint. The people who taught judo, the persons who taught, the masters, had and still have today a solid knowledge of anatomy, but they never pretended they were physicians. And sometimes people were inclined to exaggerate their actions. But what they did, or the way they acted, only came from their intention to give help. It is true that it was expressed that way, but it never was the cry that kills, the cry that revives. But I think, as always, the marvelous appeals to people so much that they tend to exaggerate a little.
De Herth et Picmal s'expliquent en finale. De Herth conserve son titre et en fin de combat, l'arbitre, le professeur Cavassay, de 2 plaques sur les pectoraux rétablira la circulation du sang arrêtée chez Picmal.
In Europe, such myths were passed on and magnified by the cinema and the music hall, and also in literature.
L'accès des cages aux fauves était jusqu'à ce jour réservé aux seuls dompteurs professionnels. Mais André Mercier, président du syndicat des judokas français, démontre que la ceinture noire de judo est une assurance suffisante pour venir à bout de n'importe quelle tigresse. Un kia d'appel ou un kia spécial inhibant valent tous les regards magnétiques de dompteurs. Les photographes gardent leur distance, mais André Mercier cherche la sienne, toujours avec le même succès. La tigresse est littéralement envoûtée. La démonstration s'achève enfin sur le complet asservissement du fauve, devenu véritable matou d'appartement.
It was only in the first part of the 20th century that judo got organized, and that its educative aspect, as it was conceived by its founder, and as it is taught in Kodokan, seen in the following pictures, became attractive to people. In France, for instance, the development of judo can be explained by the involvement of exceptional men such as Moshe Feldenkrais, seen here with Jigoro Kano, or such as Master Kawaishi. Among Master Kawaishi's pupils was Nobel Prize winner Frédéric Joliot-Curie. He sits here with his wife Irene. Another pupil was Paul Bonnet-Maury, first president of the French Federation. Paul Bonnet-Maury also played an important part in the creation of the European Union and the International Federation of Judo.
Le judo est maintenant un pont au-dessus des mers entre la France et le Japon, et chaque année, nous désirons inviter un champion japonais choisi par le docteur Kano pour venir en France et en Europe.
There were intellectuals of all kinds, men of undisputable stature, generally scientists who got interested in judo, men who were sportsmen, but who were particularly interested in judo. Well, there was Joliot-Curie, there was Bonnet-Maury. These people were right in the center of scientific research. What can account for this interest in judo is perhaps that there was a little more than an immediate competition. The reason was perhaps that there was a formula, which was the smaller opponent is not afraid of the bigger one. A smaller contender can defeat a much bigger or heavier opponent. It may be that. But I also believe that there was, and I'll say it once again, the educative side. And they were keen on this aspect, the great academics, the professors, and the different masters.
Mikinosuke Kawaishi, a judoist and great traveler, settled in France in 1936 after a visit to the United States and Great Britain.
In any case, Kawaishi knew what he was doing, and I have always said that there were two Kawaishis. The great Kawaishi who made judo in France, who made judo in Europe, and who was at the origin of the expansion of judo in the world, and that he did it more than the first Japanese. There had been Koizumi in England. There had been other experts who had traveled around the world, but in a certain way, what they did affected a limited number of people. They were good judoists, but they were not really influential. Very quickly, he decided to form teachers, who, in their turn, would be responsible for the formation of other teachers, which was my case. At the end of the war, I left for Belgium, where I developed judo there, then in Holland and then at Cuba. And from that very development, starting directly with the Kawaishi method, both North and South America have been totally taken with judo. And after a couple of years, they founded the Pan American Federation and sent a Pan American team to fight in France and in Europe.
An ambassador for good judo, Jean de Hert, won the first European Championships in the third Dan category in 1951 in Paris. In the final, he triumphed over the British contestant Gleason. Thanks to these championships, a rangy young man, defeated here by the Frenchman Dupré in the brown belt final, got unexpected public notice. His name was Anton Giesink.
La Fédération internationale a été créée en 1951 à la suite d'une initiative.
On the initiative of the European Union, which had already existed at the time, the International Federation was created in 1951, and in 1952 was presided over by Master Rizei Kano, son of the founder of judo. And at that time, 4 Pan-American countries, 1 country from the South Sea Islands and 1 from Asia, joined the 13 European nations, which had created the International Federation, reaching the number of 19 countries. Africa is not mentioned, and sometimes we tend to forget that African leaders in those times were associated with a large number of European structures. Sometimes we're inclined to speak of 4 unions. There were actually 5.
Even though Japan sends its messengers abroad, its judo remains a great mystery. Rare are the ones who have the privilege to attend the encounters between East and West, as in 1953. There is no doubt, there is Japanese judo on one side, and there are the others. This is the Terra Daigo, the champion of Japan touring Europe. Here he is challenged by 10 of the best French judoists. Only Jean de Hert obtains a draw. The 1956 World Championships, organized in the Holy of Holies, Tokyo, for the first time in history, are awaited eagerly. After a long trip, judoists coming from 31 nations meet in a single category. The bouts last 10 minutes. The final lasts 20 minutes. Natsui, the Japanese, is the winner. After defeating his compatriot Yoshimatsu in the final, Natsui becomes the world champion. The Dutchman Anton Geesink comes third. Nearly 40 years later, still in Japan, the 19th Shiba World Championships open with 98 countries represented. Ladies can now take part. Referees are smartly dressed. Points are displayed on an electronic board. The mats are not raised above ground level anymore. There are 7 weight divisions by now, for men as well as for women, plus 1 all-category division in which lightweights rarely compete. Men's matches cannot exceed 5 minutes, and women's 4 minutes. And now, ladies and gentlemen, what you are going to see is quite something.